first question is from Singapore tonight. Dear Ajahn, I am now in Singapore and I can't find a reason for going back to New Zealand. My husband and myself are celibate with no children. There are more Dhamma and Kalyano here, more Dhamma friends and Kalyano here in Asia. I'm 55 and I would like to advance my spiritual path in the next 20 years. Please advise. How do you know you've got 20 years? I don't know that I've got 20 years. We just chanted the verse on the reflection on impermanence. You know. Death is certain, life is uncertain. So hopefully you have more than 20 years ahead, but there's no guarantee there. And that's one of our practices. We reflect on the impermanence of life, the fact that death is right on our shoulder, and this gives us a sense of urgency to really put our heart into the practice of dharana, keep the precepts, practice bhavana, develop mindfulness and insight every day as much as possible. As far as where you do it, well, the best place to practice is right here and right now. So if you're in Singapore, at the moment, that's the best place to practice. We could say you're in a fortunate position, aren't you, if you've got a choice between Singapore and New Zealand. You know, that most people in the world are not in a position to choose where they live very easily. So that's your merit, that you can choose. So make a choice that based on, like you say, that which would be supportive of your practice. There's probably pros and cons for and against each place. Like you say, Singapore, you have opportunity to meet maybe with more Dhamma friends there, you know more people. You maybe have access to a Buddhist group, place to practice and meditate, offer dharana perhaps, which is good. But then in New Zealand, there's also places to offer dharana and listen to the teachings. Some people prefer a quieter life, like New Zealand will be a little quieter than Singapore, more nature around you. Some people find that helpful, even though there are less Dhamma practitioners in terms of numbers, but you can still find them perhaps, and with the smaller population, maybe you get more time to meditate and listen to Dhamma. In Singapore, some people complain, they say no time. I know you're retired maybe, you're not working anymore, but still just the social commitments of being in a city. There's a funeral every night, there's a wedding every weekend, there's birthdays and anniversaries and this and that. So some people say they've got no time to meditate in Singapore. They're either working or they're attending to these social events and they can't just quietly stay at home and meditate. So that's something to consider, isn't it? But in the end, you have to consider what supports your practice the best. If you have the luxury, the merit of not having to worry too much about money, you're retired, you've got enough savings or pension to keep you going, well, then do just choose which place will support you in your practice, where you have opportunity to meditate, listen to Dhamma. With online teaching now, that again frees us up to live in many different situations, different places. So both are good as long as you're practicing the Dhamma. If one place is going to be an obstacle to your practice, well, don't go there. Or don't stay in Singapore if that's an obstacle. Or do stay if it's good. Don't go to New Zealand if that's going to be an obstacle to your practice. Why throw extra obstacles in your way? 55 is not that old. You've still got strength to meditate, listen to Dhamma, keep precepts, do dana, do many things. You can do quite a lot of dana at the age of 55 onwards. You can do a lot of meditation. If you're really ready to, you can even ordain. Never too late. So, yes, I hope you have 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now to practice. But it's not sure, is it? So really take that on board. Every day, it could be your last day. So put effort into your practice today. Do good today while you have your time. Because life is uncertain. Let go of what you need to let go of. Greed, anger, and delusion. Cultivate what you need to cultivate. Generosity, kindness, mindfulness, and wisdom. And just put your heart into that, because that is your real wealth. When you die, that's what you take with you. To die with a peaceful, happy mind that's practiced the Dhamma through life is a blessing. So don't miss your opportunity while you have it. So good luck to you. You can contact us from Singapore or New Zealand. It doesn't matter, does it? So that's the benefit of modern technology. Another question. Dear Ajahn, I have read about something like this. The concealment of another's fault I've read about this in many of the more serious monastic rules. It is also regarded as a wrongdoing, sometimes even of an equal weight for a monk or nun to hide another transgression. I'm wondering, does this also apply to lay people too? Well, strictly speaking, no, because you're not a monk or a nun, so you don't have the same level of discipline that you've taken on. You're right, it's one aspect of our discipline is we're not supposed to hide or conceal the offences of other monastics. And if it's a grave offence, well then it is a grave offence, say, to hide it. It depends on the circumstances and your intention, the situation. But yeah, it's not something that we are encouraged to do. We're encouraged to get the person themselves to confess. If they've broken a rule, then it's their job to confess it, to reveal it to another trustworthy monk. So if you know someone who's broken a rule and they haven't revealed it yet, they haven't owned up, they haven't admitted it or done the proper thing, gone through the procedures, and we have procedures for when we break our rules, then you would encourage them to do that. Because it's not good for our training to conceal misconduct and breaking rules, because you're unlikely to learn from your mistake and move on and grow from it, and you carry the regret and some negativity around with you if you've concealed that offence. Whereas if you've revealed it, that is like you're being totally honest with yourself, with someone else, and then you undertake to keep the rule in the future, to train yourself to abandon that particular kind of wrongdoing. And that's for your benefit, isn't it? You're going to grow in the Dhamma, let go of certain mental defilements that led you to break the rule, because you're now becoming clear, mindful of that rule, and you're undertaking to keep it from here on once you've revealed it. Whereas if you conceal something, or even you conceal somebody else's wrongdoing, it can add to the delusion of the world, it can slow us down, slow them down. Depends on the situation, of course, what it is that's been done, what wrongdoing has been done, and the situation, the circumstances. For lay people, I mean, we don't have those rules. We just keep, say, on a normal basis, you might keep the 5 precepts and sometimes the 8 precepts. If it's wrongdoing in terms of law, someone breaks the law, they commit a crime, then it can be a crime to conceal someone else's crime, can't it? So that's something you have to be aware of. You can break the law by not owning up to someone else's crime, not revealing it to the authorities, to the police. Concealing a crime sometimes is something that has a very heavy penalty if it's a serious crime. So why would we reveal somebody else's wrongdoing? Well, maybe the first thing you do is talk to them, isn't it? May not be a crime necessarily, maybe just wrongdoing as something immoral. Say they don't keep the 5 precepts. If it's somebody who you know and they trust you and you have a good relationship with them, or you may be able to talk to them if they've done something that you consider unskillful. It may not even be breaking any kind of laws, civil law, criminal law, but it may be just something you know is bad karma. Well, you may want to see if you can talk to them about it to see if there's any way they'll change their behavior. So maybe somebody goes hunting or fishing, or they drink, or they tell lies, and so on. You might talk to them about their behavior if you can. If you have their trust, their respect, they may listen to you. Well, that might help them to become more mindful, and you could encourage them to give up that behavior, change their way. And there are sometimes some situations when you can do that if you pick the right time. So maybe they've done something unskillful and they're suffering for it, and you can maybe at that point out how they're suffering because of their wrong behavior and help them to review what they've done and maybe make a plan to keep the rule, the precept from then on. And in the same way, our own practice, sometimes it's helpful for us to reveal to a trusted friend where we've gone wrong in our practice, the mistakes we've made, unwholesome things we've said and done. We tell someone else. As a lay person, you're not a monk, so you're not breaking a rule of discipline. But you may still, as a way of practicing to become clear in your mind, you may reveal some wrongdoing or some unwholesome behavior to another person. It could be a teacher or a trusted friend. It just helps you to get to know yourself and set your mind on not doing that again. Particularly with a teacher, if you have a trusted teacher and you're aiming to purify your mind of defilements, sometimes it's necessary to be honest, isn't it? We often don't like to admit our faults and our weaknesses and the unskillful things we've said and done, and so often these kinds of behavior linger and we keep doing them because we're not being fully honest with ourselves, with others, so we have some bad habits and we just keep doing it. Whereas when you're brave enough, clear enough, and you tell somebody that you trust, particularly a teacher, well, they can give you some emotional support, they can give you some advice, maybe how to deal with the desire or the intention that lies behind that unskillful behavior, how to deal with it, let go of it. And that's often how we can get beyond some of our unskillful conduct and become really mindful and clear, is by telling someone else. As far as somebody else's unskillful conduct, well, you just have to look at the situation and gauge what the consequences will be for them, for you. Will it help the situation, or will it make things worse? If you reveal their mistakes, their faults, maybe they'll just get really angry and seek revenge on you. So you have to look at your intention first. You have to have the intention of kindness and compassion with their well-being in mind. You have to look at time, place, choose the right words if you're going to do this. But then sometimes you may decide it's not the right time, it's not the wise thing to do, and you just let it go because it's their action, not your action. So you have, perhaps you could say, in comparison with a monastic, you have a little bit more flexibility here because you're not keeping, or you're not breaking a rule by not revealing your friend's misdemeanor or their bad behavior. You have more flexibility to consider whether it's really useful and helpful to them or not. I guess if other people are involved, if someone else needs to know that this person is doing something unskillful, you may, out of compassion to other people, reveal this first person's wrongdoing so that other people know to protect them from this person's bad habits, bad conduct. So that may be a decision you make in certain situations, although it'll be tricky, but you may have to sometimes tell people so that they can be on their guard around this person if they're doing unskillful things. Could be in practice as well, like Somdet Do, the monk behind me, when he found the deer in the trap in the forest. You know, we say that's breaking the first precept, to go hunting to harm animals. So he let the deer go, but then he put his own foot in the trap. So he, out of compassion for the deer, he interrupted someone else's bad behavior, and then he let them find him. But the person was quickly remorseful. Or Luang Por Juan, when he was staying in a cave, and a man hunting a deer. Again, the deer came to him for protection, stood right next to him, but the man still shot him. So the man was like shameless and pretty cold, shooting at a deer right next to the monk. But for some reason, his gun misfired. Instead of shooting the deer, he shot himself in the face. It blew up in his face. He had serious injury. And before Luang Por Juan helped the man, he just said, "Oh, you've got to keep the 5 precepts. Will you keep the 5 precepts from here on?" And he said, "Yeah, anything." They said, "Okay, now I'll help you." So sometimes you look at a situation when the consequences have literally blown up in someone's face, and then that's the time you can talk about their wrongdoing, or maybe discuss it with someone else as well to try and help them. But there's no actual offence if you don't say anything, if you conceal someone's wrongdoing, unless it's breaking the law. There's another question. Only through meditation can samadhi be achieved, and ekaggata comes after samadhi or before. Can Ajahn please talk about all the different types of samadhi? Ooh. Well, meditation is this word we use nowadays. The Buddha's word was either bhavana, which means cultivation, can be samatha bhavana, cultivation of calm, or vipassana bhavana, cultivation of insight into the 3 characteristics of existence: impermanence, suffering, not self. Or sometimes meditation is translated from gamatana. It's a word often used in the Thai forest tradition. Gamatana means the basis for work or basis for action. And Ajahn Mahabua, Ajahn Chah also sometimes talked about meditation as a form of work. And you're working at establishing mindfulness on an object. So you might be reciting the word Buddho, the meditation word Buddho, or the paying attention to the breath, being mindful of the breath, and there are many other objects, meditation objects. There's 40 main gamatana meditation objects, which are what practitioners work at, develop mindfulness by using one or more of these 40 meditation objects. And when one puts attention on a meditation object, a skillful object, a wholesome object, such as the breath or recollection of the Buddha or metta, loving kindness and so on, the idea is through repeated establishing of mindfulness on the object, then over time the mind settles down with that object and really gets to know that object and stays with the object, becomes fixed on the object as opposed to thinking about other things or falling asleep. It's as simple as that. You just keep doing it, and you can do meditation or bhavana or gamatana in any posture. So you can do walking meditation as well as sitting, standing meditation, and even if you're careful, lying down meditation. But as we know, that's dangerous because it's easy to fall asleep. Nevertheless, you might still do it before you go to sleep at night, or when you're ill or exhausted, you may still meditate in the lying down posture. And your aim is to develop this continuity of mindfulness, really get to know your object, really learn how to put attention on the object, keep the attention there as opposed to getting caught into distraction. As we do that over time, then the other factors of samadhi begin to arise: piti, rapture, joy, interest in the meditation object. Because we're getting to know it, sticking with it, it actually becomes interesting. And body and mind start to relax and feel good. And we also get happiness or sukha vedana. So as vitakka is initial application of mind to the object, vichara, sustained application of mind on the object, keeping it with the object through effort. Piti, rapture or interest. Sukha, happiness, contentment. And this is a deep feeling of inner happiness which stills the mind. So the restlessness of the mind fades out because you're happy, content. And these four qualities lay the grounds for ekaggata, or one-pointedness, when your mind is at one with the object. It's one-pointed on the object, or we say unifies on the object. All your mental energy unifies on the object because that's all you're aware of and that's all you're knowing from moment to moment with your continuous mindfulness. So you experience unification of mind, and these 5 factors of samadhi are all there in this unification of mind. So ekaggata, one-pointedness, comes at the end. It's not the first thing. I mean, there's a little bit there in the mind, but it's not yet well developed. So you're one-pointed for a moment, then it's gone. So you train with mindfulness, effort, and these other factors arise, and with them one-pointedness arise. So if the mind unifies and its mental energy gathers together for a little while, we call this momentary concentration. It's not something you really find in the sutras, but in the commentaries you do, and most of the meditation teachers I've studied with use the term because it's helpful. It's a practical term, and it seems to be a realistic, practical term. Most meditators experience from time to time their mind unifies for a short period, maybe just a few minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes, your mind gathers together and is quite unified, and the 5 hindrances, the distractions and obstacles to samadhi, they drop away and you feel good and calm, you're awake, you're alert, your mind is clear. And if you progress in your effort and your practice, you may experience what we call upajara samadhi, where the mind gathers and unifies for longer periods of time. And this is called access concentration or neighborhood concentration, where you're just in the neighborhood of jhana or full one-pointedness, full absorption. So it's prior to jhana, or what we call apana samadhi, which is a label for all the jhanas, really, a general term for absorption. The neighborhood concentration or upajara samadhi is just in the neighborhood but not quite fully absorbed in the object. And this level of samadhi is very useful for contemplation and observation of truth, or vipassana, because you can still sense. Your mind hasn't gone so absorbed that it's no longer hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, or having thoughts arise. So in upajara samadhi, you can still feel your body, you can still have a thought arise, a memory and perceptions can arise. You can hear a sound, you can see something. So you can experience kanika, momentary concentration, or upajara samadhi with your eyes open. You can walk around in upajara or kanika samadhi. Apana samadhi, which covers all the jhanas, you're still. So whether you're standing still or sitting still, your mind has gone inwards. So you're not thinking and experiencing the normal senses and the body in the normal way. Your mind has gone inwards and absorbed into itself, using an object, such as the breath. And we have 4 rupa jhanas, material jhanas, and then 4 immaterial jhanas, arupa jhanas. The Buddha became skilled in all 8 jhanas, 4 rupa jhanas, arupa jhanas, and this is his skill in samadhi. But they all arise out of the same practice of bhavana or gammatana, training the mind in mindfulness, developing strong one-pointedness, unification of mind, and then refining the experience by gradually letting go of the more coarser factors or qualities in the samadhi. So vitaka vichara, the initial and sustained application on the object, are abandoned, and then piti, the rapture, is abandoned, sukha, until just one-pointedness with equanimity is developed, 4th jhana. This is considered the best kind of jhana really for the practice, because you're experiencing very pure equanimity. It has a purifying effect on the mind and the body. And when you come out of 4th jhana, the kind of upajara you experience is much better than the kind of upajara samadhi you experience before you go into jhana. So this is considered the best mode for the practice of vipassana, is coming out of 4th jhana. The mind is so equanimous, clean, pure, bright, lucid. It's in the best situation to see and observe and contemplate the 3 characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and the selfless nature of physical and mental phenomena. When your mind is still, then you can see impermanence. You can see unsatisfactoriness, dukkha. You can see and know the lack of self in experience, because your mind is still. And the best stillness is 4th jhana. But that doesn't mean to say you can't contemplate in kanika samadhi, upajara samadhi, having not yet attained jhana, apana samadhi, or you may attain 1st jhana and come out and enter and be in upajara samadhi, and you can still practice vipassana and so on. So actually, in terms of samadhi, it is good to consider whether your mind is one-pointed or not. Because if it's not one-pointed, it will tend to be jumping around. But what level of one-pointedness, what depth of samadhi, that just comes through time and skill and experience in the practice, and you don't necessarily need to always be measuring or comparing. Is this jhana yet or not? Is this khanika or upajara samadhi? The labels and the descriptions are there to help you understand what you're doing, where you're going in the practice. But Ajahn Chah used to say, just know whether you're peaceful or not. Because if you're peaceful, then you can observe the three characteristics very well. But you don't have to put a label on it. Upajara samadhi, first jhana, fourth jhana, arupa jhanas. In jhana you can't contemplate anyway. You have to come out of that deep state of absorption in order to contemplate impermanence. Because in samadhi you're not able to observe and contemplate your experience. You have to wait till you come out. So upajara samadhi is where you do all this work of vipassana. So one thing many practitioners have said and described is, even if they have this ability to enter jhana, they don't do it very much, because what their aim is to abandon greed, anger and delusion, and the sense of self that forms in the ordinary experience of thinking and feeling and remembering, and this body, clinging to the body. And so they're keeping in khanika or upajara samadhi most of the time, so that they experience pain of the body when they're sitting, rather than going into deep samadhi where the pain disappears. And this takes some training, because if you've attained some jhana, you don't want to come out and observe pain, do you? You want to stay in this nice blissful state, this kind of heavenly blissful state. You don't want to experience anything painful or restlessness, agitation of mind, sleepiness, anger, sensual desires. You don't want to contemplate them, to see them as impermanent, as not self. You would rather just escape into your deep state of samadhi and absorption. So practitioners have to train themselves not to cling to the happiness of deep samadhi, but actually withdraw and stay where their mind is still, but they're observing the arising and passing away of phenomena, what we call vipassana, sensations in the body, mental states coming and going, feelings, pleasure, pain coming and going. It doesn't mean to say we don't develop deep states of samadhi, but we can't develop vipassana, insight that liberates the mind from greed, anger and delusion. In those deep states of samadhi, we have to withdraw and then contemplate. Because the goal of Buddhism is to abandon greed, anger and delusion. One needs to develop wisdom and insight to do that. So one has to be out of jhana to do that. So I hope that helps a little bit. Just keep practicing. As I said, I've always liked this description of Ajahn Chah gave. If you're peaceful enough to contemplate, it's good enough. Observe anicca, dukkha, anatta in your experience. Just keep going from there. And your samadhi may develop into deep states of absorption, fine. But focus more on this contemplation of anicca, dukkha, anatta, because that's how you abandon defilements. One more question. Is the paradise of the West a real realm stated in the suttas? Is it part of the Devata's realm? Thank you. The paradise of the West. Where is that? Is that California, the west of the USA? Is that the western suburbs of Melbourne? Is that paradise? Tullamarine Airport? Yes, the rise, what we call Pure Land Buddhism, isn't it? In the Mahayana tradition found particularly in China, Taiwan, maybe Japan, Korea as well, a little bit, Tibet even. And there's a little bit of a contradiction here, as far as I know. I'm not an expert on Mahayana Buddhism, but I'm a Theravada trained monk. In the Theravada description, we have what we call the Suddhavasa realms, which are jhana realms, Brahma realms, but only inhabited by anagamis. And that's what we call non-returners, so people who have developed to the third stage of enlightenment. They develop their practice of vipassana, they've abandoned attachment to their physical body. Their insight is so clear, they have no more greed, no more lust, no more anger, no more attachment to the body. They still have subtle defilements. They may still be attached to the bliss of jhana and subtle sense of conceit, and obviously avijja, ignorance, is still there. So they're not arahants, but they're called non-returners because there's no more of the coarse defilements that bring back rebirth as a human. So when they die as an anagami, they don't come back as a human, they go to one of the 5 Suddhavasa realms. Avita, Akanita, Sudasa, Sudasi, they all have their names, and the difference between each realm is kind of determined by the strength of your particular indriyas, the 5 faculties, sattva, virya, sati, samadhi, panya. So we're getting quite technical here, these terms, but bear with me. So the anagamis are reborn in one of these Suddhavasa realms, and then they continue their practice there of vipassana, insight into these subtle mental defilements that are still in the mind until they attain arahant, nibbana, from those realms, and they're no longer reborn. So that's what we call the Suddhavasa realms. And then in the Mahayana tradition, they also tend to call the Pure Land the Suddhavasa realms. And it is pure, but the description in Theravada is that you're only an anagami can be reborn in those realms. In the Pure Land, we can say anyone can aspire to be reborn there, and even bodhisattvas, which is a bit of a contradiction because, as I said, I'm not an expert, so somebody may know more than me, but a bodhisattva, by definition, has made an adhitthana, a determination to practice to reach Buddhahood, to be a Buddha. So they know they're going to be reborn, and the strength of their resolution to become a Buddha will bring them to be reborn. So these Suddhavasa realms are obviously not for the bodhisattva. And they say normally the bodhisattva is reborn in a Dusita heaven realm. But the description of the Pure Land tends to describe these realms as the Suddhavasa realm, the Pure Land, and people particularly would like to be reborn with Amitabha Buddha. It's one part of the tradition, so they do a lot of chanting in homage to Amitabha. Amitabha Buddha, in the Theravada description, you'd say is a bodhisattva with great longevity. They call Amitabha the Buddha of, indefinite light, endless light. So it's as if they're a bodhisattva who's always going to be there. So again, that starts to get complicated. Because a bodhisattva is going to be reborn until they become a Buddha. And Amitabha Buddha one day will become a Buddha, but they'll become the last Buddha the world knows because they've made a vow not to become enlightened as a Buddha until all other beings are enlightened. So it's a very attractive goal for practitioners in those traditions is to be reborn in the heaven realm with Amitabha Buddha and just stay there and become enlightened there. But it sort of contradicts some of the things you get the explanation you get from the Theravada school of Buddhism. Nevertheless, it's still good. Who knows who's right, who's correct? Well, you'll only know when you reach it, won't you? So if you're reborn in one of these Suttavasa realms as an anagami, that's definitely a good thing because you're very close to Nibbana. If you're reborn in a Suttavasa realm and you describe it as a Pure Land, well, I'm not sure I should comment. Maybe but some teachers would say, well, they're probably still in the heaven realm, Dusita realm, or a heaven realm if they really reach a Pure Land in that sense, because they can still maybe aspiring to the bodhisattva path, Mahayana Buddhism. But perhaps you need to discuss this more with a Mahayana teacher, because I may be doing them a disservice here, and I don't want to do that. And as I said, the Pure Land School teaches many good things, encourages people to devote themselves to the practice. They do lots of chanting, lots of meditation also, recitation of the word Amitabha, Amitofo, Amitofo. Whether there's still the emphasis on vipassana, insight into abandoning the 5 khandhas and then attaining the 4 levels of enlightenment, stream, winner, sakadagami, anagami, arahant. I'm not sure of that. You'll have to ask them whether they practice in that way and if that's their goal. But nevertheless, there are many good people practicing the Pure Land. They do a lot of good dana, service, helping other beings, a lot of kindness and compassion practice, a lot of devotion, a lot of strong faith. So certainly much to be praised in the Pure Land School. But you have to ask a practitioner who's very skilled in it what understanding of vipassana and letting go of the 5 khandhas and insight into not self they have, to really see whether there's a difference in what they're practicing and what the Theravada school is practicing. So I'll maybe leave that one there. Last question. Does Buddhism teach that it is wrong to have career goals? Is it craving and therefore the cause of suffering? Well, it can be craving. I guess you could say for a monk your career goal is Nibbana. So you could become a monk or a nun. That might be a good way around it. Of course, most people are not going to become monks and nuns, and they do have careers and jobs and they have to earn money. So on the normal sense, the worldly sense, of course you might have career goals. You want to get on and be successful in the job you do. And that might involve certain aspects of the Dhamma path as well, maybe serving the community, helping people. Many jobs involve that. But certainly career goals and career paths can become the basis for craving and attachment, desire, just wanting to succeed in a kind of blind way. Attachment is always sort of blind, where you just want to be successful for the sake of it, and that's the highest goal you're seeking. This is what we call the worldly dhammas, wanting wealth, praise, fame and fortune, status, and all the happiness and pleasure that all these things accompany these things. That's the sort of normal worldly goals that many people are pursuing, and they're considered a lot coarser or lesser or inferior to Nibbana, the highest goal of the end of craving and attachment. But maybe where you're at in your life, you're still pursuing a career path, you want to be successful, so that's okay. But then if you're a Buddhist and following the Buddhist teachings, you would probably be reflecting on a daily basis on what level of attachment and craving is arising based around your career goals. And you'll notice, where are the telltale signs that craving is slipping into your thinking? Well, craving leads to suffering. So maybe the frustrations of not yet achieving your goals, or the frustrations of competing with yourself, with others to get your goal, and all the anguish that can bring up, the disappointments, the frustrations as you encounter obstacles, the greed that forms around your goal can also bring you a lot of suffering. Because where there's craving and attachment, there'll be suffering. So watch out for that. And the other thing is that because it's a worldly goal, a career goal of getting successful in your career, your job, making money, getting to the top, whether it's whatever that is, however you define that for yourself, whether it's to become your own boss, self-employed, or get to be CEO of the big company, to be the CEO of the biggest, richest, wealthiest company in the world, whatever. How you define your career goal, be careful, because all these goals are impermanent. And they're suffering and they're not self. They're what we call the worldly winds. So you may achieve some success in your career through effort, fine, but that success may fade. Someone else may overtake you, or conditions change. Maybe your company goes out of business, or the world economy changes and your line of work is affected by that. Maybe you lose your job altogether. Maybe the cost of the money you earn changes. A lot of people are experiencing economic hardship at this time. You're seeing it, and through history we've had many, many periods of depression, the ups and downs of the economy. Your career can go up and down in that way, because these are what we call the worldly winds. And the Buddha said, your mind is like a little leaf on a tree being blown around by the worldly winds. So when you get what you want, your career is going well, you're happy, things are going well, you're successful, getting ahead, you're happy. When you hit an obstacle or you even retreat, go backwards, you're suffering. And this is the ups and downs of human existence, isn't it? Whether you're involved in business or science or medicine or education or justice or entertainment or whatever. There's so much ups and downs, so many factors are involved, a lot of them you can't control, out of your control. So your basic suffering is the effect of the worldly winds on your mind. One moment success, another moment failure, one moment wealth coming in, another moment you've lost it. You maybe take on a debt and then you pay off your debt and you're happy, and then you take on another debt. There's so many different kinds of worldly winds blowing against our mind that there's a lot of suffering involved in pursuing career goals, career paths. So be aware of the impermanence of these things. And that's where your wisdom and your cleverness comes in to help you as you pursue your goal. And then you bring the Dhamma in to help you. So if other people get ahead of you, you practice mudita, rather than being jealous and vengeful and grumpy. Mudita for them, appreciate them. They're getting ahead, good for them, they work hard, they're successful, they got the job, I didn't, never mind. They're making the millions, I'm not, never mind. They're getting ahead, they've got all the praise, not me, never mind. Have some mudita for them. When it's going well for yourself, good, but don't cling, because it may change, and when it changes you'll get hurt or upset or sad, angry. So constantly reflect on the impermanent, changing nature of conditions in relation to your job, your career. And of course one day you're going to retire, aren't you? You don't work until you drop. There'll be a time when you retire. Maybe that's the time to pursue the spiritual life, the spiritual goals. Like the one who is 55 years old and ready to just pursue the spiritual path. I would say that's a great benefit and bonus for your life, a reward. Get to the point where you can actually set aside your career goal and pursue the real useful thing in life is your spiritual path, nibbana. Meditate more, listen to the Dhamma, do more dana. So maybe that would be another level of career goal that you could aim for. Having the freedom, the ability to be able to pursue the Dhamma practice because you've worked enough in the world. Or some people will do it hand in hand. So you serve the community, you do your job, and you also practice the Dhamma at the same time. Everyone has different skills, we have different things that will support our Dhamma practice, different things we can offer back to the community. But you might say this is a higher goal. Ultimately, I would say, it supersedes your career path, your career goal. Because the Dhamma is not affected by the worldly winds. The true Dhamma that you develop, the good karma and the Eightfold Noble Path you develop in your heart, ultimately is making your heart, your mind firm, clear, bright, free from suffering. So better than any career path, ultimately. But that's not to look down on a career that you may develop in your life. That's fine as well, that's good. But don't forget the Dhamma practice. I know many people who have been successful in their career, achieved great heights, made money, made fame, good reputation, contributed to society in different ways, and that's fine. But some of them, because they practice the Dhamma as well, they listen to the Dhamma, meditate, try and keep precepts. As they get older, they often get tired of the career path and some of the petty sufferings of life, work life and competing with other people and dealing with the world. And you quite often hear them say, ultimately they find the spiritual practice the most fulfilling activity of their life, more fulfilling than job fulfillment of pursuing a career, even when they're successful. And we would say when you die, ultimately it's the Dhamma that you've developed, the dana, the sila, the bhavana, the good karma you've developed, that's what you take with you. The wealth, the fame, the fortune, you leave that behind. You can't take it with you. So, I'll leave you with those reflections tonight and wish you well in whatever career you're pursuing. May you continue peacefully, harmlessly, safely, but also may you pursue the Dhamma path and find true peace and happiness from that. So I'll leave it there tonight.